Welcome,
Hey, I know I'm
welcome to the RIP 28 podcast. The RIP 28 podcast. This is episode number 4. Episode number 4. Hi, I'm your host, Sly the sports guy. They call me Sylvester Williams. You can call me whatever you want. But I am here. I'm joined by 4 of my closest friends as we sit down and we talk about some things that the world want to talk about. The RIP 28 podcast is a spot for men. It's a safe zone for men where we can talk about things that men sometimes talk about. Join with me today. We're going to start off in the top corner. In the top corner, I'm joined by Mr. TB. How you doing up there, T?
Hi, everybody. It's Professor TB. Just wanted to say peace and blessings in this world of turmoil.
All right, on the other side, I'm joined by Coach AB. Coach AB, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's going on, world? This is Coach Anton Bennett. I'm just here trying to make sure I'm giving a good spiel out to the world in this trying time.
All right, we're going to go down in the other corner. We're going to go all the way out to the boondocks, way out there in the country. Shouting out to my man, Mr. Nesbitt. What's going on, brother?
Hey, this Chance, man. Chance make them dance. Just ready to talk and get it popping.
All right, we're going to go over to the other side. My man riding in the Lexus with the sunroof closed. He got the sunroof closed. What's going on, Salt?
What's happening? It's your man Mike, a.k.a. Salt. Faith without works is dead. Just chopping it up with my boys. Let's get it.
All right. Now we won't talk this week. We want to talk about something that hits us awful hard. I got 4 different brothers. They bring in experience from 4 different career paths, but they all have to deal with something major that goes on with us as black people in our black community. And it is this thing called code switching. For those of you all who don't know what code switching is, let me give you the Wikipedia definition of code switching. In linguistics, code switching or language alternation occurs when a speaker alternates between 2 or more languages or language varieties in the context of a single conversation. Multilingual speakers of more than one language sometimes use elements of multiple languages when conversing with each other. Now, that was a whole lot. But basically, code switching is when you got to talk different at your job in front of the white folks. That's basically what code switching comes down to. So now we got 4 different brothers who have 4 different career paths. So we want to talk to them and see how code switching affects them and their career path. We want to start off with the academic. Let's start over with Professor TB over here. You know, what's going on with this thing in code switching in your world?
Well, thanks, Sly, for introducing the topic and allowing me to speak on it. So, as you've alluded to, I work in higher education, and one of the things that we think about when we conceptualize code switching is that there's essentially 3 elements as we deconstruct it. The first one is going to be the performative aspect. So that's basically your behavior, right? And basically how you are interacting with individuals and, you know, how you decide to present yourself. And the second aspect of it is going to be the accountability aspect. And so therefore, as you are behaving with other people, they're going to hold you accountable for the presentation that you bring forth in terms of interacting with each other. And then the third one, and probably equally as important, is the authenticity aspect of it, right? And so when we talk about authenticity, we're talking about do things, you know, feel the way they're supposed to feel, smell the way they're supposed to smell, you know, sound the way they're supposed to talk. So all these different elements are part of what we consider code switching. As we move between our different social groups, we realize that all 3 of those elements are going to be things that we have to make sure that we uphold and adhere to as we negotiate these different spaces. So in terms of higher education, right, you've got an industry where the pursuit, generation, and curation of knowledge is going to be at a premium. That's the expectation. And so therefore, as an individual myself who comes from a public school system that is not necessarily esteemed in terms of its rankings or whatever the case may be, I cannot use the same vernacular that I would use amongst my peer group. I have to go into the higher education annals and make sure that as I communicate with staff, I am presenting myself in a very appropriate manner, right? However, that's not something that is static or something that's very dynamic, because as you move from group to group, you'll find that there's different codes that are applicable to different groups. So if I was to speak with a group of Black men, it's kind of similar to how President Obama used to do. I may become a little bit more relaxed in my presentation because, once again, that performative aspect allows for a more authentic presentation of myself. But from terms of the audience receiving me, they're going to hold me accountable in terms of how I present. So if I present in a manner that is incongruent with how they have perceived me to be based off of, the missions or goals that I said I was about, then that's going to be problematic as well. So, between working with fellow employees of color, whether it's working with students, there again is another group that has its own distinct codes. And therefore, you have to be able to adjust so that you can better relate and understand in a manner that's going to be serviceable to their distinct needs, to their salient desires. So you do end up doing quite a bit of code switching. And hopefully one of the things that I was able to bring forth is that it's not just a racialized thing. It's really more of a contextual thing depending on who your audience is.
Hey, man, basically, we needed you to code switch a little bit in your answer, bro. God damn. You can tell who got the most degrees on the podcast. Man.
Hey, I was gonna say that I can tell who went to school the longest. That's my boy.
You guys caught me in research mode, man.
Somebody was playing cards doing class. Doing class. But since you had something to say, let's put it down. Let's send it over to Chance. And what Chance brings unique to the table is Chance is actually a leader of men. He's the supervisor or complete manager over his whole building. So most of the time, if you go into a place and you're not in charge, you have to kind of code switch to the people in charge. But Chance is actually in charge. So how do you deal with code switching? Do people code switch to sound hip to you, or do you have to code switch a little bit for the people?
First of all, yeah, let's get right. I ain't no supervisor. I'm the plant manager, bruh.
Okay, my bad.
But I do want to say something about this. I've been thinking about this since Wednesday when we brought this subject up, and I was like, do I think that is necessary? At first, I was like, maybe, but I feel like there's a whole bunch of people that do. Because in the business that I'm in, we have like 200 plants all across the United States, but we do have a corporate office, and that's two different things. When you work in the corporate office, it's shirt and tie, slacks, shoes, and stuff like that. I work in a manufacturing plant where you got to wear steel-toe shoes, high visibility vest, earplugs, glasses, and stuff like that. So it ain't as, I guess, stuck up as it would be in some corporate type thing. And now I started thinking, I'm like, man, this is a pretty tough question. I personally don't think it should be necessary to code switch, but I think you do have to do it to some degree, and it kind of really make a difference on what kind of job you have. Okay. And then it's according to how you define code switching. You can mean acting differently, or you can mean your appearance. Because me personally, I'm about 6'2", 260. I got dreads. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. I basically was told by one of my higher ups, my regional general manager, that he brought one of the VPs, vice presidents, to the job one day. And after they had their conversation or whatever, he came back and told me, like, he's a white guy. I mean, like, he's one of the guys that I trust with everything in me because he's a really good guy and everything. He basically told me that the guy said, I ain't look professional enough because I'm walking around there with dreads, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what do that got to do with anything if I'm getting the job done? You know what I mean? And it kind of it kind of pissed me off because I was like, you see my work, so why do my hair have anything to do with anything? And that made me realize though that it ain't about what you know, it's about who you know, and it's about your perception from people. Because I know I ain't got a lot of time, but let me skip down to this.
Hey, but you know what? I want you to hold that thought right there, Chance. I want you to hold that thought. And I want to go up to Anton because Anton is in HR. All right. You know, he's a coach, but he's also in HR also. And it's real interesting you brought up the fact of you're high up, a regional vice president or whatever, regional manager, didn't think your look was professional. Now,
Right.
Anton, when you deal with HR, hiring people and everything that goes on in human resources, I know it has to be some type of code switching that goes on with you, but what about appearance switching? I don't know if that falls under the umbrella of code switching, but how does that work with you?
Well, I can tell you like this. Code switching is pretty much my whole game. Every day I walk in that plant, I have to make sure I'm making every ethnicity, every religion, every color comfortable in the plant.
You've been doing that since middle school, though.
But guess what? I'm doing a great job at it. And the thing is, I have to make sure I'm able to talk to a white guy that is a old Vietnam veteran who is, probably a Trump supporter. And we have to find something in common that I can go to him every day and say, hey, how your day going? Is everything all right today? How's the kids or something? I got to find something that I can be comfortable with, make him comfortable working at the plant. You know what I mean? So I have to code switch from there. Then I got the little might be a 21-year-old black guy. I have to tell him to pull his pants up every week. That's my code switch. They look at me like, this old black guy. This black, man, he's
black guy.
I want to say it, but what I'm talking about. It's just, then I have to, after a while, I have to bring somebody to the office and say, all right, look here. what I look like there on the floor ain't me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I get the relationship with the younger crowd. You know what I'm saying? So I have to code switch every day I go to work. So with Chance with appearance, appearance is going to be a tough topic always. As you can look at Chance here, had dreads, long dreads. Then you can look at a white guy who has long blonde hair. The hippie type. Is that appearance different than what Chance's appearance is? No, same appearance. But we can't say that one is better, is worse than the other. So that's the thing with appearance.
Okay. Now we want to go on the other side. Let's talk the salt for a second. How does salt deal? How do you deal with your stuff on your business end? How do you deal with code switch?
Well, I'm a business analyst. So I basically work in the IT field. And in particular, I kind of more or less is like a liaison between business operations and program developers. So when it comes to code switching, I basically have to be able to adjust in terms of my audience. Of course, I can't, kind of speak about the same way with, operations manager as I would with a programmer. It's kind of like a totally different conversation. So from the business standpoint, that's kind of my code switch. From the standpoint of, an African American male versus my counterparts, which actually in IT it involves Indians from Asia, China, and so on. So I do a lot of code switching in terms of, making sure I'm being as professional, speaking clearly, no slang as I would maybe with, a very close friend or something. So, there's a lot of different aspects of code switch I deal with in that regard. I think also too is just a matter of perception, like I think Chance and maybe Anton said, perception basically as African Americans, we have to be more mindful in terms of being represented as, African Americans, because sometimes people look at, one person and think they represent, an actual race or culture. So in a lot of cases, I have to be mindful of that in terms of who I'm speaking with, knowing my audience, to make sure that I'm representing myself, the Black community, and also just being a professional as I am. So
that's a real good point right there. You bring up representing the Black community, and it kind of throws me off that we have to be a certain way to be considered a good representation of our community. And that, I guess that's a lot where this code switching comes in. Now I want to throw it back at Tim, because you're dealing with a lot, being in college and dealing with with kids basically, 18 to 22-year-olds. How do you deal with code switching with the young brothers and sisters that you run into? Because Anton spoke a little bit earlier how him being in HR, sometimes he'll pull a young brother to the side and say, "Hey, this who I am at the office, but that ain't who I really am." You might have to pull up your pants here to create this type of impression. How do you deal with that with your students, Tim?
Hey, before Tim step in there, I want to say something real quick.
Go ahead.
Me and Tim live next door to each other. We grew up our whole life together pretty much, and dude ain't never really changed, man. So it's I think the code switching thing is trying to say it's like a black and white thing, but Tim been the same dude since I met him, and it's like he just act different than somebody like Sly. but I mean, yo, you cool too. You my boy. But it's just like you got to take that into account too. It ain't no cookie cutter thing. Like, all black people supposed to act like this. All white people supposed to act like this. So the code switching thing is not just that cut and dry. But Go ahead, Tim. I just wanted to cut in and say that because you're my little brother, little big brother.
I appreciate that. Slide to your question. I think that kind of alluding to what I said earlier about both accountability and authenticity. It's critical when you're talking about dealing with younger populations, because when you want someone to listen to you, they have to trust you. In order for them to trust you, then they have to feel like there's a connection between you and them. So this is kind of where that code switching comes into play. If you're able to demonstrate the fact that you maybe speak their language, that you identify conceptually with some of the struggles that they have, then you build that rapport, so then they're more apt to listen to you when it's time for you to impart some knowledge that comes from age and experience. If you try to do that in the absence of that, then, whether it's young kids or whether it's somebody like you and me, they're like, well, who the hell is this guy? Why is he trying to tell me these things, right? So that's why it's extremely important to use code switching to kind of bridge that gap, so that you're able to come across in a manner that's trustworthy.
Okay. And now, like I said, we talked a little bit earlier about how Anton pulls folks to the side, pull the young brother to the side to kind of explain the way of the world. Now, Chance is way out in the boondocks. We don't want to get a location out, but Chance out in the middle of nowhere. He out in the middle of the country. And do you ever run into a situation where you have any young brothers with you, and you kind of pull them to the side and say, hey, you might want to change this a little bit, or do you be who you are? How do you deal with the young brothers?
Well, I'm in a kind of unique situation, man, because at my job, I'm the only black person in management. There's one more black person on the production floor. So, and he's older than me. But all these guys are, country, guys. I ain't gonna say rednecks or anything like that, but they're hardworking guys, and we all got each other's respect. I think you got to kind of say what kind of work setting you're in, because with my work setting, it's all people who do manual labor type deal, so they kind of all feel in the same bubble kind of thing. Some of you guys may be in a different setting where you got to deal with people who, trying to scratch their way up to the top. People I work with just trying to make a living for themselves and their family, and we kind of feel like we're all on the same page in my setting. But in some other settings, like I've been in before, I do know that you kind of gotta switch it up just to get in where you fit in.
Okay. Now another thing I kind of want to throw about, most of us the fathers, Tim the only one living the dream, with no bills and no other mouths to feed. Tim the only one living the dream. But how do you explain code switching to your kids, or how are you going to explain code switching to your kids? Because I think Chance gave a real unique example that he still has his dreads. I remember when he started growing his dreads. Chance has his dreads, but he's in a really high position where he's not necessarily climbing that corporate ladder because he's already got to the top of his plant. He's got the top as far as he can go in his plant. But what do you say to your kids when it comes to code switching in public or code switching in the workplace when they get there?
Let me speak on that first for anybody, because I know where all y'all live, and it's a little different than where I live at. So my experience on that is, how can I make my kids have a little more ethnicity in them, because all they have grown around is the Caucasian people. So when I went to the University of Memphis, and Memphis is one of the hoodest places in America. I love Memphis to death, man. I represent Memphis all day. But when we go back, the black people there be like, "Oh man, your kids talk white," and stuff like this. And I'm like, "What is talking white?" You know what I mean? like just because you pronunciate your words and you don't speak in a ghetto way, that does not mean that you're not black. I mean, we black as they come. But that's another thing that we got to deal with on my end, because they're used to talking proper and making good grades and doing what they're supposed to do. But some black people act like that's a bad thing. And I just do not understand that. It's just crazy to me.
Now, what about you, Tom? How do you tell your babies?
Well, the funny thing is, we almost had a Karen incident this weekend. We was at a swimming pool for a 14-year-old birthday party, and how apartments do, where we stay at, it's a different situation in Columbia. It's a lot of Clemson kids, a lot of white people, so they done told our kids, they got to get out the pool because their name ain't on the leash because of the coronavirus. So, the kids got out, came and got all the parents and everything. We came down, it could have got bad. I'm gonna be honest, it could have got real bad. If it could have went left real quick. But we took the high road, walked off and everything. But the thing we had to tell the kids when we got in the house was like, hey, them situations right there, we just want to make sure you make it home. So, hey, just make sure you're able to teach your kid how to know when it's time to stand your ground and when it's not time to stand your ground. And that's our code switching technique right now. It's just, hey, know when it's the right argument, and know when you just need to get home and get somebody else involved in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than yourself.
All right. Now, what about you, Salt? You got some younger kids.
Yeah, I got a 4 and an 11-year-old, and it's interesting you brought it up because me and my wife we recently have a serious, sit down conversation with our oldest, about the George Floyd situation and some of the things that are going on. And, you know, we shouldn't have to have that conversation with
Right.
him, but it's necessary just based on the color of his skin today. But just in general, though, speaking, me and my wife, we try to make sure that our kids kind of, make sure that especially when they're outside of the household, make sure that they always speak, proper English. Even when we're in the kitchen or something, and our youngest, our 4-year-old, he's still learning. So we always make sure we correct him when he's a little off. So I think just kind of starting from a young age, basically kind of making sure they know kind of the proper way to do things, um, and to speak when they're communicating with whoever, whether black, white, Asian, or whatever, so that, we kind of set them up for success in that regard. Of course, they kind of pick up some slang, maybe things that we say that normally is kind of normal in the black community. They pick that kind of stuff up, but we try to always gear them to make sure, they're mindful who their audience is so that they won't be offensive, and also be able to also represent us as African Americans.
Right? That's real interesting. The way you're saying that, the way you are speaking to your kids and trying some of the things y'all are trying to impart on your kids. Like me myself, my son, my ex-wife, she's a school teacher, so she's definitely hard on my son about speaking correctly, speaking the King's English correctly. Right. She's a little bit tougher than I am. But that kind of leads me to my next question, because even though I want my son to sound intelligent, I want him to, to be able to fit in that world. But why is it that if I talk quote unquote black, I'm not intelligent? If I talk like the people, like where I'm from, I'm not intelligent. It's kind of a two-part question. First of all, is code switching necessary? And then the next thing is, do I have? Is it right? Is it right? So we'll start off with let's go the different way. Let's go back to Tom. Let's say is code switching necessary, and is it right?
That's a hard question, man. Hey, it's necessary. Depends on the job you got. Yeah. It's necessary, but is it right? Hell to the no, it ain't right. You should be able to be yourself at all times. But it is necessary. You got. What's your main job for going? What's your main purpose for going to a job? To get paid and provide for your family. So if that's a necessary part of your job, it's necessary. Sorry to say it like that, but it ain't right. But it is necessary. I can tell you, I could never do my job if I was just going there. Hey, this is me. You know what I mean? Hey, I don't care. You did your job wrong. I don't care. Hey, you fired.
Hey, time.
Hold on, Chad. Hold on, Chad. But one thing I want to get back to is we keep talking about code switching in me and Chan's profession, dealing with men. I have to deal with women also. And the women is a code switch on that also.
Yeah.
Y'all understand that? It's a lot of women who are at work just to make a work husband. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying?
The comments that Anton are making reflect. It's
the truth. It's
Tom
the truth.
Get fired. Tom get fired when they hear
that. Listen. You got to be able to say, hey, coming off the wrong way. Hey, I'm gonna be straight up professional. Ain't no, short talk or anything. You gotta understand how to code switch from that. You can't be a friendly person. You gotta be strictly about policy. You know what I mean? So that's a code switch you have to do in that situation also. So I know Chan say he don't work with a whole bunch of men. It's different.
I got women too. But
Me
my
too.
thing
Need to
is,
change stuff.
Hey,
I,
hey,
I
Chan women. Hey, I know what Chan women
no, don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm talking about the play. I ain't talking about nothing else.
Hey, I think almost in any work setting, you gotta act professional. So is trying to be professional code switching, or is
My
it?
thing is,
I
what's
mean, unless you're a
professional?
garbage man or something like that.
But check this out, Chad. This is my problem with the whole thing about you just said you have to be professional. But if I talk, why is it if I talk with slang, I'm not professional anymore?
I mean, you can't go up in the job crip walking. Like what up,
But
fool?
what
Up?
if
Like,
that's you
you
though?
know what I'm saying? Yeah,
What if that's you though?
But
what up, me?
according to your regional vice president, having dreads ain't professional.
Yeah, it ain't.
You see
And
what I'm saying? But you
the
do
thing,
your job better than everybody else. Your plant
Right.
is running smooth, running best in the country.
see,
But
I got them down now, but I usually when I go to work, I put them in a ponytail, so it looked like I got a short haircut until you look behind me. And he did actually say he looks like he's a leader now. And I was like,
He said it like
how
that.
you? I was like, how you look like a leader? Hey, you see my voice? He looks like he's a leader now. but I'm saying like, okay, so what does a leader look like? That's a great question because leaders can come in many forms. You don't. It ain't no necessary look. You have to act that out. You got to be a leader, and people got to know you and get to feel your vibes and all that stuff to be able to follow you. It ain't got nothing to do with what you look like. Like I say, I work with all white people, and I love all of them, and I think most of them love me. They act like they love me anyway. I don't know if it's just because I'm their boss or what, but
let that
I
check
mean,
be late. Let's see if they still love you.
Yes, sir.
but we get
They
along
won't.
great, man, and communication is great. And I talk to them like I would talk to you guys actually. Like I say in the manufacturing setting, when I'm out on the plant floor and stuff like that, we shop it up, do whatever. But then when I have a meeting with some regional managers and stuff, you got to sit there and act professional, and you got to know your stuff. But it's just a difference in my profession.
All
But
right. What
But
about
let
you,
me,
Scout?
yeah. So to your question, Sly. So if you're talking slang, you know, why isn't that I'm not referred to as intelligent? I think that comes from a lot of stereotype and perception, because when people think about a doctor, a lawyer, they think about someone that's speaking in a certain tone, certain proper English, um, versus maybe somebody on the street, a bum or something. That might be the totally opposite way of communicating. So I think to your question, a lot of that comes from perception and also, just stereotypes, man. Be honest with you. Um, on the other side, I think um, just who you're communicating with, who's the audience you're trying to actually communicate with, to get the message across. I may not be able to speak to someone, kind of in slang versus, kind of they might receive proper English a little bit better, just whatever their background may be. So, I switch it up depending on who I'm speaking with. If it's somebody even at my job, that maybe grew up on the streets or is just more comfortable kind of street, slang or whatever, I can chop it up with them like that. But someone that maybe came from maybe Chance, like his daughters or his kids or whatever, they kind of grew up in a more, whites and they speak more proper English. That might be more comfortable for them. So I basically have to read who I'm speaking to if I'm trying to get the message across. So.
Okay, okay. What about you, Tenny?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of come from left field compared to everybody else. I wanted to kind of revisit something that Chance said earlier giving me a shout out for acting the same as he's known me. I think that one of the things that we as individuals have to consider is that our identities are constantly in a state of construction contextually. And therefore, the me that Chance knows is probably going to be somewhat different than even the me that Sly knows. So on and so forth down the line. If you were to ask some of my ex-girlfriends, they would also potentially have a different picture of who I am versus you guys. So I think that code switching is just such a loaded concept, because even when you get to actually doing the code switching, you have to determine what is identity and what are values. One of the latent concepts within code switching is the respectability politics and the idea that you are the Black representative that people are going to see. And part of my philosophy when it comes to that is we have to push back against both of those, right? Because Black people are not a monolith. Even though I might love you brothers and endear myself to you guys a lot, just because somebody meets you doesn't mean they met me, right? So on and so forth, right? So the whole idea that I have to wear a suit and tie in order to receive respect, I reject that notion, right? Because obviously, as you can hear, I can project myself with a level of articulation and self-reflection that, you know, belies the fact that, you know, I'm worthy to be in the room, right? And it shouldn't matter what I'm dressed as. It shouldn't matter, you know, all that other stuff. But still, I do understand that you have to be practical as well. At the end of the day, man, you got to make money. You got to have a paycheck, right? So you can't just show up with no clothes on talking about, well, I got 5 degrees, right? Probably going to have to put some clothes
I don't know. It depends on the woman.
on.
What a man.
Well, I particularly would rather see the woman with 5 degrees and no clothes, but you know, whatever floats your boat, Mike.
Nah, I'm good.
All right.
If Ken was a rapper, he'd be in the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right.
Pretty deep brothers. Man, well, I'd like to thank you brothers for joining us today, man. Sitting down, having a good conversation, man. And that's what we like to bring here on the Rip 28 podcast, you know, just good conversation. You know, we're gonna close this thing out. You know, Salt, you got anything to say before we leave?
Yeah, so just good discussion, man, all around. Like Tim mentioned, you know, it's kind of a loaded question when you talk about code switch. But I really think it just boils down to, you know, knowing who your audience is, understanding perception, even from the other side that you're talking to. But just keeping in mind that, you know, at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to feel that you represent Black community, especially us as Black African Americans, but sometimes it's a necessity just to be, you know, able to progress, you know, until we get to that point where we're just seen as men, you know, as just another man instead of a Black male. But that's pretty much all I have, and yeah.
What about you, Chance? Something to end on us with?
Yeah, man. I've been kind of fortunate because I always been the kind of guy who can adapt to most situations. You know, like if I was like an extra in the movie or something like that, I'd be the non-threatening Black guy. You know what I mean? It's like everybody. I don't know what it is, but everybody love me. And like even with this group right here, y'all guys didn't talk that much, but it's like a common denominator that, you know, me and y'all are all cool, and I think I feel like I'm kind of the glue to keep everybody together type thing. So
well, that's because you in the middle. That's because you in the middle of nowhere, don't have nobody to talk to.
Hey, that might be right. I get a little lonely, so I'm like, man, let me holler at my boys. hey, that might have something to do with it. You might be right. But in the past too, you know, when we have some get-togethers and stuff like that, our time in town, I feel like I get all you guys together, and I kind of feel proud about that. But
There you go. What
I
about
love
you,
y'all, man.
Tom? Any closing statement from you, Tom?
Well, you kind of go back to the beginning of the podcast when you said the definitions, Wikipedia definition of code switching. You said a lot, and what I said off that, that's something we should be able to do, speaking different languages. That's something positive. But when you look at the Urban Dictionary, code switching, it's something you really don't want to have to do. It's something that shouldn't be necessary to do. But like I say, I'm glad it was a great topic tonight, man. And like I say, I code switch every day I go to work. I can tell you that right now. Every day, even in football, I code switch. Go ahead. I'm good to go, man. Peace out, fellas.
All right, Tim, what about you? Any final thoughts?
I've done a lot of high-level talking this podcast. I might as well end it on that way. And basically my advice to everybody out there is, even though we're talking about code switching, no matter whether we're talking about science and quantum physics, where we're talking about subject-observer interaction, or whether we're talking about religion, specifically Christianity, in terms of where the divine one and divine energy resides, or whether we talk about even literature with the book One Nun and 100,000 by Luigi Pirandello. Basically, there's a different version of you that resides in everyone else. So fuck everybody else and just be you.
All right. Well, that's been the RIP 28 podcast for this evening, episode number 4, code switching. I'd like to tell everybody, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Just go down there and click on RIP 28 podcast. Click on subscribe. We need to get those subscribers up. Tell a friend, tell another friend, and tell another friend. You know, this is the RIP 28 podcast. We're going to keep on talking. You might not like what we have to say, or you might like what we have to say, but we're going to keep on saying it here on the RIP 28 podcast. Y'all take it easy.
Yeah.
We got some sponsors who want to give away some free food, boy. We ready.
We ready for it.
Hey, hot mic.